Zach, we are still at Portsmouth Island. We're still having a great time. This place is incredible. But we've come here to answer an important question. We've come out here to answer who each of these machines is for. And behind me, the Polaris Xpedition and the Polaris Ranger XD 1500.
You look at Polaris's website and these things are right on top of each other. They're within 10 horsepower and $1,000 of each other in this spec. These are both North Star editions. This is a 2-seater, this is a 3-seater. How do you know which one to pick? You know, Polaris is gonna tell you the XD 1500 is for the guy who needs to do a lot of work and be comfortable while he does it. And they're gonna tell you the Xpedition is for the guy who wants to have a lot of fun, get out there, take a bunch of camping gear with him. Is that true?
I don't know. And I mean, I can see walking into the dealership and not really wanting to take Polaris's word for it.
Yeah, I mean, I love the XD 1500, and I gotta say, coming in, if it was my nearly 40 grand, that's the rig I would buy. I love that steel belt transmission. The 3-cylinder is excellent. It's good and comfortable. If you're not doing really technical, really high-speed riding, the thing rides great.
My money goes to the Xpedition. Great thing about the Xpedition is last year it was a brand new platform from Polaris, and even though it looks a little bit like a utility rig, it's more of an off-roader. It stays composed when you're hauling across the desert, and the bigger 5-door versions can carry you, your family, all your stuff, and still be great in the rocks and roots.
I mean, I can see that, right? Like, it feels like a grown-up R-Max. So you get all the same fun suspension, but it's just nicer to live with. You've got the sealed cab, you've got power windows, HVAC, a banging stereo, all that great stuff.
Yeah, and if you need it to do work, it'll do it.
Yeah.
And I can see why you love the Ranger, right?
Because of my hat.
It's a full 3/4 ton though.
Yeah,
it's a serious work machine. Like, this is approaching small pickups for capability around the farm. And again, there's enough room for coming out here and you can fit 4 days worth of camping gear in it. We've done it. This is gonna be a tough test.
Yeah, and you know, it doesn't break a sweat. You know, cooler, fuel, water, all that stuff goes in the bed and you're not working the thing.
And it also turns fewer RPM than that one does to maintain speed. So it is quieter than the Xpedition, which after you've been in it for a while is a big, big deal.
Yeah, so, you know, we're gonna be here for a couple days. I really can't wait to see where we land on these things, figure out exactly who these things are for.
Yeah, let's go land some fish.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so we're ripping back to the camp after doing a little fishing up at the point, ran into these guys, Jack and Kevin. They got stuck in a big truck. We're gonna try something you probably shouldn't do and see if the HD 1500 will pull this sucker out. See what happens. So yeah, that worked like a treat. Man, XD 1500, that thing took care of that with no drama whatsoever. Snatch strap obviously helped. That thing's got a proper tow rating and we put it to use today. All right, Aaron, we've been here for about a day.
And we've learned things, have we not?
I think so.
I guess we should start with some just kind of basic amenities.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the thing about camping out of one of these things is that you need room for gear.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to underestimate just how much room a cooler takes up.
Yeah, and you got a cooler. I mean, if you've got an easy up, like, forget it. So I guess the biggest thing we need to talk about is bed space, and there's a drastic difference between these two.
The XD 1500, Polaris calls it a...
Wait, just let it chill. While we're talking about bed space, we're also wetting a line because what else do you do at the beach? So you're gonna have to bear with us here.
Polaris positions this thing as a 3/4 ton side-by-side, like a 3/4 ton pickup truck, and that's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
The bed's a good size, fit all sorts of nonsense in there. The stuff that you need if you're gonna spend 3 days out here in the sticks.
Right, you wouldn't really be hurting for space if you had this, if you needed to get a cooler, a tent, another cooler, all that stuff, you could fit it right in the XD 1500. I wanna say it's a little bit of an unfair comparison when you look at the bed on the Xpedition, but the Xpedition is targeted towards overlanders. And we said it earlier in the video, you know, the ADV model seems to have a little bit more space in it, and we're finding that in spades with the XP. It's not a bad machine, it's just a little bit outclassed right now by the 1500. And I know this isn't a comparison, but one of them is shining.
The biggest problem with the Xpedition is the XD 1500.
Yeah, Polaris released them in the same year, and there are a lot of things about this that strike me as old Polaris, you know?
Yeah, where that feels very much like new Polaris.
Yes, it feels like they've redesigned something. This feels special, where this feels like, you know, they put a bunch of old parts together to make a different whole.
Well, and that comes down to all sorts of details, right? The transmission, this has the old style clunky Polaris shifter.
Yep.
This is the new beautiful steel belt transmission that works really, really well. Interior fit and finish, this feels like old Polaris. You've got clunky buttons in sort of weird places. In here, everything's really nicely laid out. As you're using it, you can sort of run into that. I mean, earlier, we were sort of trying to figure out, you know, which one of these things is faster down a line. UTV tried to take off in two-wheel drive, in part because when you put this thing in park, you bump the thing out of four-wheel drive into two-wheel drive every time.
You can also hit the wrong throttle mode the same way, shifting. This has 3 selections on the gear stick. They're all the selections you need. Everything else is handled by drive modes. That is a really nice way of doing things. It's very simple. It's not clunky. You know, it's got an automotive style button. Every truck now you turn a knob to do different stuff. This one does that. The other thing is they both have similar amenities, right? HVAC, JBL stereo, electric windows, but somehow this one feels much more premium, even though ostensibly they have the same amenities. And I don't know, that's just, how is that true?
I don't know. The one thing that the Xpedition really has going for it, I love these seats. They're super comfortable, they're really supportive. And you know, earlier we found out that the suspension on this thing, it's more playful. It is better in sort of choppy stuff. Is it substantially better than the XD 1500? Yes and no.
I think we also need to talk about the engine. This one is so much quieter, and the torque is a revelation when you're out here. This thing, we're going 25, 30 miles an hour down the beach. This thing's turning 4,500 RPM.
This one's turning 7,600.
Which is bananas.
Yeah, 7,600 RPM out of a twin, that's a lot. And it translates into a lot of noise. And again, for a vehicle that you're thinking about using as an expedition or an overland vehicle where you're gonna be spending 3 or 4 hours a day to get out to where you want to be, that stuff just sort of grinds you down.
Yeah, I mean, it's exhausting.
Back in Knoxville, we tested exactly how loud the Xpedition is inside. It's 115 decibels. That's louder than a rock concert.
Yeah.
Makes me sound like my grandfather, but you know, louder than a rock concert.
But if you were at a show, you would need earplugs to maintain your hearing, and you would never think to put earplugs in when you got in your side-by-side.
All right, Aaron, so what surprised you here?
Really how far apart these two machines are. They're really, I expected them to be kind of in the same sort of class because they're from the same manufacturer, they're the same price point, you know, they're same power, but they're just so drastically different. This feels like an RMAX fighter. This feels like maybe the best utility rig that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, when you say RMAX fighter, I mean, it's not even a contest, really.
No, you'd buy that.
And yeah, like the price point here is considerably higher, but this is a way more usable machine. HVAC alone, you're warm in the winter, you're cool in the summer. That means a lot more comfortable riding. When we had this thing back in Tennessee, I had this sucker up to the fenders in water, and I was stone cold dry inside.
It's kind of unfair to compare the Xpedition to the Ranger, just as it's unfair to compare the XD 1500 to the Xpedition, because they're really meant to do different things. And I think that's hard to tell on paper. When you get them out here, they really shine in different ways.
What surprised me the most was how usable and enjoyable this was.
It really is.
Like I'm used to getting in a utility rig, and there's a certain amount of, all right, I guess this is what we're doing. It's buckboard, it's slow, it's kind of noisy. All those things don't really make you want to spend time in it and have a good time. That's not that. Polaris and other manufacturers have been saying automotive grade for a really long time. This is the first one that feels even remotely close to that.
And that's especially important to point out because it literally is farm equipment. And so when you get in a utility rig, you expect farm equipment, and you don't get that feeling with this, even though it will work just as hard as anything else out there and harder.
The best machines just get out of your way and let you do the job. It really hits a Goldilocks place that's really difficult to find for a lot of manufacturers.
It lets you focus on being on this beach in this place. That's what we want out of them. All right, who are these things for?
This thing has a lot more Razor DNA in it than anything else, and that makes sense. It shares a drivetrain. That means it's a lot more Jeep Wrangler than it is Land Cruiser. It's a little rougher around the edges, but it's a lot more playful than something else like the XD 1500.
That puts it squarely in the camp for someone who needs to do a little bit of rock crawling, wants to do a little bit of camping, but isn't really interested in moving hay bales around. Whereas this thing, you can come out here, you can do camping, you can get out into nature, you can take a buddy with you, but when you get home and you need to actually do honest work, or you want something that's quiet and comfortable and you don't want to bring a Tacoma, XD 1500 all day long. And I think what's especially cool about these machines is it shows that Polaris has really figured out specialization. They've aimed this at a certain set of the population who doesn't want this, vice versa with this. They've aimed this at a certain set of the population that doesn't want that.
They're very similar in a lot of ways, but they really are two different flavors of ice cream.
All right, well, we've got another 24 hours to go. We've got fish to catch.
We'll see you in a bit. Aaron, that's it for our time at Portsmouth Island. Did I convince you that the XD 1500 is the machine if you're picking between these two?
Boy, I think in this specific case you did, but it's important to note that you have not spent any time in the Xpedition ADV model. That is the enclosed Polaris Xpedition. It's like an SUV form factor. I spent 3 days in one last year in Arizona, had the time of my life, and there were a couple of important details that this one doesn't have. It has enclosed lockable storage. You could sleep in it if you need to. It seats 5, and there's all kinds of room in the interior for coolers and whatever with tie-down points. The XD 1500 does not have any of that stuff.
Yeah, that's very true. And I gotta say, out here where we've been dealing with horse flies the size of your hand, a mob of mosquitoes, insane wind, all of that would be pretty nice.
And if you want, it fits a rooftop tent. That seems like the solution.
Okay, yeah, but to be fair, I pulled out a full-size Chevrolet Silverado today.
Yes, you did. I got nothing for that. I'm sure an Xpedition could do it, but this did it easily.
Well, I can't wait to spend some time in that ADV model. Until then, it's time to make some dinner, hit that ferry in the morning. Be sure to check us out over at utvdriver.com. We have all sorts of information on these two machines. Buyer's guides, extra videos, galleries, everything you need to know if you're thinking about buying one of these machines. We're on YouTube, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. We want to see you there.